Welcome to Arcane the Brewcast. I'm Jamie, your Arcane brewer.
And I'm Jake, your Arcane engineer.
Thank you to Momrock for the use of their song Conversation in the intro.
One of the questions I get asked the most is, why do we sometimes ferment in a plastic bucket and other times in a glass carboy, and what's the difference? Well, there are a lot of advantages to the bucket. It's easy to fill, it's easy to empty, it's got that spigot so you can start and stop the flow, and they're relatively cheap. And much more durable than the glass carboy, which, by contrast, is made of glass, easily shatters, and has a very small opening at the top that's difficult to fill and empty. The main difference is sanitation. While buckets can be sanitized, they're made of plastic and easily scratch, and those scratches create places for bacteria and germs to hide. Glass, while scratchable, is much more resistant to it and easy to clean. So for the seltzer we're brewing today, we need to decide whether we're going to ferment it in a plastic bucket, a glass carboy, or a third thing.
A third thing?
Yeah, like, I don't know, a watermelon.
A watermelon.
A watermelon.
That seems like it'd be a pretty stupid idea for all the reasons you just listed.
A very stupid idea, but I've got stupider. But maybe we should work up to it.
Well, today we're going to brew a seltzer and a watermelon. We've done a lot of sugar fermentations before, but let's talk about seltzers specifically for a moment. You've probably seen a lot of hard seltzers out there, but what you might not know is that they're really easy to make. All you need to do is make an invert syrup, like we did in the first episode, or the Sundelion episode, or the Skeeter Pea episode. We make invert syrup a lot, and we're going to do it again today. The basics are, heat sucrose until it dissolves into water, breaks down into a mixture of glucose and fructose, which are sweeter and easier for the yeast to eat. Simple as that. I'm starting with a liquid yeast, Loki by Imperial Yeasts. I'm going to be making about 6 gallons or so of seltzer between the carboy and whatever fits in the watermelon, so I want to make sure we have enough yeast to ferment all of that quickly, ideally before our fermenter starts to lose structural integrity. To ensure that our yeast has the maximum strength possible for this fermentation, we're going to make a starter. When making a starter, you usually want it to be composed of whatever you're going to be feeding the yeast in the primary fermentation. In our case, sugar. We use 1/3 cup of sugar to make an invert sugar syrup, then blend in proper yeast nutrient. I chill my sugar syrup down and pour it into a flask, then top it off a little with water. Then I messily squeeze as much yeast goop as I can into my flask. I drop in the sanitized stir bar, a little plastic bean with a magnet inside it, turn on the stir plate, and let it spin. In 24 hours, the starter is chugging away happily.
Alright, we got our watermelon. We're going to place it here. We're going to keep ours in a aquarium in case there's any mess created. So it's going to need to be horizontal like this, so it fits. It works out kind of nice that way. These things grow on the ground. So there's usually a side that is a little flatter. Then we're just going to take a core and poke a hole in the top. Now that we have accessed the hole, created a hole, we're going to try to blend up the contents. It's like a weed whacker. Yeah, we lost a couple zip ties in there.
Wow. Okay. All retrieved.
All right.
I mean, there's a cavity in there.
Yeah, but I never got any of them spinning like I wanted. Okay, so the chopstick didn't work. Plan B. I'm gonna take a straw over here. Don't try to hold the straw with just your hands. You're gonna hurt yourself. Clamp it down even if your clamp's not attached to anything. dust in your eyes.
Very careful.
I'm wearing goggles, but they still get up in there. See, I'm wearing goggles. Alright, kind of flat. Oh, no. Don't do this. Don't do this with a box cutter. This is... Okay. Yeah, this is all pretty safe. Just get some scissors and cut down some zip ties. Poking a hole in the zip tie with a nail here. Probably a better way to do this, but it's good enough. Worked. Oh, okay, that's not too bad. No! Not into the fingers.
And doing that is not enough to tighten it. You should always tighten it with your own hands after.
And I'll like tuck it in, I guess, right?
Yeah,
With the.
so-
I haven't seen any splits.
So maybe now's a good time to pull out and see what we're working with.
Oh, that's what she said.
All the fruit is loosened up inside, but it takes a lot of stirring and shaking it up to get it to come out of that tiny hole. As we free the watermelon juice and pulp, I start to pour it into a carboy. We shake the melon, whack the melon, vibrate the melon, and with a great deal of persistence, we eventually end up with a hollow melon. This sugar syrup was made by filling a watermelon with sugar and then letting it drip out of little holes in the bottom. We're not using all the sugar we put in the watermelon for this, just the stuff that dripped out of the bottom over time. We shake some nutrient into the blend of puree and sugar, top the jug off with a little more juice, and check the gravity.
104.5.
Then we add a splash of the Loki yeast from our starter and set it aside on our fermentation shelf.
I found this bong. I think it's probably a 6 or a 5.5. Yeah, that fits in there good. And we'll bump up to the next size bung if the watermelon gets too soft and can't hold the seal, but I think we're good there.
Now that we have an active starter and a fermenter ready, let's make a seltzer. We're pretty familiar with this process at this point. I weigh out 5 pounds of sugar and pour it into a pot with hot water to dissolve and invert the sucrose. Once the sugar must is cooled down, I put most of it in my glass carboy. The rest of this is going into the watermelon. Of course, we don't really know the volume of the watermelon fermenter, so we're just going to slowly pour in sugar must until it overflows a little, then pour a little off to leave room for yeast. Then, we put our watermelon in our aquarium to ferment. Next, we check our gravity, and then move the big carboy into the red room next to the aquarium. Pro tip, it's very easy to forget about your stir bar and pour it right into your fermenter with the yeast, but it has a magnet in it. So if you remember, you can hold it in place while the rest of the flask is poured out. Okay, so the aquarium wasn't a great idea. The goal was to keep the watermelon away from bugs and to contain the mess if it started to break down. But within a few days, we realized that while it was keeping bugs away, it was also keeping moisture in. It's not uncommon for a watermelon to mold a little at the stalk, but it's still pretty sobering to see in these circumstances. We take the melon out of the aquarium, clean it, and wipe the outside of it with isopropyl alcohol to kill anything growing on the surface. Once we've completely sanitized the outside, I give the inside a sniff.
Smells like seltzer.
But just in case, we'll be sure to package this separately from the rest of the seltzer. We transfer the seltzer out of the melon by simply dumping it into a conventional carboy. Then we take both carboys of seltzer and put them in the freezer to cold crash. Once all the remaining bits of seed and pulp have settled to the bottom, we transfer the big batch of seltzer into a keg to carbonate. For the small batch of watermelon seltzer, we add a little bit of priming sugar and put it in a few swing top bottles to bottle condition. I'm not a huge fan of bottle conditioning, but with a batch this small it makes the most sense. Now that we've got all the seltzer out of it, let's take a look at the inside of our fermenter.
The zip tie. You blended that up pretty good.
Yeah.
Got a good cavity in there.
Doesn't look rotten. How's it smell?
Smells kind of like watermelon and seltzer.
Okay, that's a good sign, right?
Like, I don't love that combination when it's like warm, but there's nothing nasty there.
I feel confident that the inside of our fermenting vessel did not get compromised.
So, it feels like raw meat. Not bad at all. Not better than regular watermelon, but not bad, really. It's
Watermelon and seltzer, right?
watermelon and seltzer, and it's kind of room temperature, so it is what it is.
All right. Watermelon fermenter. Feasible for at least a week.
Yeah, as long as you keep it sprayed with some alcohol on the outside to keep mold from growing. We had a little
tuft.
tuft right at the nipple.
Right. I think it's called the stalk.
The stalk.
Okay, fermentation's all done. We've had a chance to try everything. We've got a little bit of our seltzer the regular seltzer. That we've added some of our watermelon sugar too. And then we have some of the Blottomelon, the seltzer we fermented inside a watermelon. We're gonna try both of them.
Now both of these passed through a watermelon. The syrup in this case was actually sugar jammed into the watermelon.
That's exactly correct.
And this is a seltzer fermented in a watermelon, but a different watermelon.
Yes.
Yes.
Here we go. So we'll start with the one fermented inside the watermelon because I think it's going to be a little more subtle.
Hint of watermelon.
Yeah. There's like a few bits that have been stirred up now that I poured it. Oh wow, that's a lot of watermelon actually.
Yeah, it tastes like watermelon seltzer.
It's got like through. It's got like a little bit of tartness, I think, since there's like trace amounts of watermelon juice in here. But man, I really like that.
Yeah.
That's a very good balance. There's still sweetness left, but it's very drinkable. No carbonation though. Didn't really bottle condition.
Fermenting a seltzer in a watermelon isn't the most trivial task. Do you think it's worth it? Do you think it can be accomplished any other way?
Yes. If you want to get the same flavors we got all this flavor from contact with the watermelon. So make a seltzer just like we did and chunk up a ton of watermelon and let it ferment on it. A lot of the watermelon aroma is going to gas off during fermentation, but clearly some of it stays. So why not? It's good, subtle, not really an over-the-top amount of watermelon, but it's unmistakable.
And other than the low carbonation, as you pointed out, it's a clean seltzer.
Oh yeah, very clean. I'm not getting that usual sugar wash fermentation flavor. That really cleaned up. I think it helps that the watermelon probably has a ton of nutrients.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Okay. So now we've got a seltzer that we fermented plain right next to the watermelon, and then we've added the watermelon sugar. Little sweeter as I didn't expect since I just dosed it with sugar. Not quite as clean.
No, not at all. It has that off flavor. Well, I consider it an off flavor. I guess I don't like it from the sugar fermentations that come up in seltzer a lot.
Yeah, it's not ideal. You want to give seltzer just a little bit more time to clean up. This didn't really clean up that much.
I think you were on to something about the watermelon providing nutrients to it as it was fermenting.
Yeah, I do too. That also had like some really good tartness in it that I felt like balanced it very well. This is a little one-dimensional.
Now we did use a yeast nutrient specifically designed for seltzers with this one, correct?
We did. We used proper nutrients. And it's a good idea with pure sugar fermentation to do staggered yeast nutrients across fermentation to kind of give them more nutrients when they need it. But it was kind of, we were pretty busy with the Jamboree. Speaking of, we're back from the Jamboree. We had a really fun time. I was in New Hampshire. Really cool. It was great to see some of you guys out there at the Jamboree. Cool to see some new subscribers. We served so many things. We served a lot of things that we don't really talk about on this channel, which is like good stuff. Usually the stuff we ferment here is kind of like weird for the sake of being weird. But the stuff we had at the Jamboree was a little bit more weird for the sake of being tasty. I especially really like the bourbon cola hydromel. That came out really good. But we also served some of the stuff on this channel, and a lot of you really like the green juice Hefeweizen Shandy, which, hell yeah. Still have a little bit of that left. We should,
The Baja.
Oh yeah, the Baja Blast Hydromel really killed at the booth. There are a lot of people mixing it with the Monster Energy Moonshine that Ryan made. It was a fun night, guys. If you have not already, been to the New England Homebrewers Jamboree and you live in this area, next year, dude, September, look out.
It's worth it.
Absolutely. In the meantime, you might notice that we're kind of in a new space here today. We'll talk more about that in the future moving forward, but who's in the know? Know what's up. Anyway, I'd like to thank Mama for the use of their song Conversation in the intro.
If you got any suggestions for a future brew, leave them down below. We read all of our comments.
We read them all. And I usually try to respond. If I didn't respond, man, I'm sorry, social media, right? In the meantime, we'll keep posting news here and on our Facebook. And stay in touch if you want to learn more. See you next time.
Yeah. Still feels quite solid.
Spank that melon.